All right, cool. Okay, so the next session, we're going to talk about measurements and attribution. And again, how many of you guys went to the Google Partner Summit in New York 2 weeks ago? Okay, a few people? Okay, for you guys, this is going to suck. It's exactly the same thing as we presented there. For everybody else, this is exactly what we presented in New York, so you're not going to miss anything, and you get a much shorter flight or commute to get here. But before we do, I just want to make sure we all remember that we are taking questions throughout today. The other big thing that I'll say is, you notice we only get to a few of the questions during the sessions themselves, but there are lots of Googlers around. You see them with the Good Day t-shirts and also the red t-shirts that are out there. So make sure you're out there, talk to the product specialists, the people from Google here who can answer all the questions that you've got, and we'll do as many as we can up here. But let's keep that Slido thing going, and then of course we've got the forum we can use after the events as well. All right, so you guys ready? That first session was fun. This one's not going to be fun. We're going to do 2 hours of a deep dive into the most effective fractional factorial techniques for modeling attribution. You guys ready for that? Yeah, some excited statisticians in the house. Yeah, actually I don't know how to do that, so we're not going to do that. We're going to talk instead about the higher level things of measurement and attribution. I want to kind of start out. Again, we talked in the first session about how this path to purchase has changed and all that. We're going to dive into that a little bit more and talk about how. And then I'm going to come out with what I call a path to attribution. So at Cardinal Path, the company that I have, we basically see a lot of clients that will call us up out of the blue and they'll say, Dave, I just got a call from my CMO. It says we have to be using econometric media mix modeling along with actual device graph-based digital attribution by Friday. Can you help us out? And I said, maybe. Can you point me in the direction of something? And they're like, well, we don't have a website yet, but when we do, we're going to be in a place where we want all that media mix modeling and attribution. Right? Most people aren't ready for that yet, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to pick along the way, and that's what we're going to focus on in the second part. So let's start with measurement. And I think measurement's a good place to start because, like I often say, I do believe we are in the middle of a revolution. I think we are living in the middle of the digital revolution, and I think years from now, the books, or if we're still using books, maybe tablets or like mind control stuff we put on, we'll be talking about this time we lived through a revolution just like the Industrial Revolution. And if you think about it, that's going to force change. And it's already forced change. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, think back to when most of the world's population was out there farming what they ate. That's what we did. We farmed what we ate, and then we gave some to people who collected our taxes. We went to an execution every Friday. It was, good fun for a while. But eventually, things changed. And the Industrial Revolution came along and we got machines. And then people had to come into the cities and they had to work on these things called machines that they didn't know what they were. And there were a few holdouts, right? People who went back to the fields and they still tried to plant their corn and their beans more than the machines, but the machines could do it faster and better. And so those people were left behind. I think that's where we're living right now. When we talk about this idea of embracing AI, there will be the people who still sit there with AdWords Editor or in the interface and click the buttons all day long, and they'll be left behind. Right? The people who embrace the technology will be the ones that survive. Right? Now this is really interesting. Because we're living in this time, there's a great statistic that I like to use. And I've got young children. My youngest child is just entering kindergarten. And this statistic says that by the time 2030 rolls around, by the time he's ready to get a job, 85% of the jobs that people have are things we can't even imagine yet. Right? Think about that. We're in that same position. That's a pretty amazing place, right? There's not going to be a job for someone to go there and do a bid management or a campaign structure creation. Right? That's not going to be a job by the time 2030 rolls around. There will be jobs we can't fathom yet. Think about this. There's going to be like an air traffic controller for automated flying cars. Right? That'll be a job that people have someday. Right? And I asked my son, I remember, he's young, I said, hey, buddy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be an astronaut. And I told him, I'm an honest parent. I said, buddy, your hopes and dreams are going to get crushed by the time you're in like second grade. You got to be realistic here. The reality is you don't even know what you're going to be when you grow up, right? You're going to be like the bodyguard, the in-home bodyguard that protects families against refrigerators and microwaves when they go crazy with the artificial intelligence, right? That'll be a job that people have someday, right? But I think we have to adapt to that. We really have to adapt and we have to learn. And this is a cool time that we're in, right? Because this has changed the way that we as consumers live and work. Back in the before the Industrial Revolution, it was super easy, that path to purchase, right? I was sitting around in my house, had all my buddies come over, and they'd walk into my workshop, and they'd make fun of my anvil, right? They'd say, Dave, your anvil is terrible. You need to get a new anvil. And I would feel terrible about it, and then I would be exposed to some kind of advertising, right? And in this linear path to purchase, when I see the ad for the iAnvil 8, I think to myself, I gotta go down to the iAnvil store, and I gotta buy the new Anvil, right? And I do, I pick it up, I bring it home, and everybody, all my blacksmith friends think that everything's cool again, right? And I get to the store, the kid there at the store, the 16-year-old Anvil salesman, he wanted to tell me to wait for the Anvil 9. He said that was going to be a lot better, and I just had to wait another month. It would be more expensive, but I should wait. And I didn't want to wait. I got the iAnvil 8. It's okay. I go back, my friends come over, they tell me how much the Anvil is great, and I say, yeah, you should go and get one too, right? And I've just done every path to purchase in that linear path, right? Number one, I was made aware of the product by an advertisement. And then I engaged with the product by going down to the store and talking and touching and having that conversation, right? I converted. I bought the product. I brought it home. I was retained as a customer, and I was even a customer advocate when I told my friends that they should go buy this thing too. And that was something that we all got. We all figured that out. And it was easy for us as marketers to interact with people in that very linear, very singular channel experience. Right? But things have changed, right? Now, a very, very simplistic path to purchase crosses devices, it crosses channels, and it crosses time. There's no such thing as a linear path to purchase anymore. Things are happening all day, every day. We wake up in the morning, our phone is there with all the information in the world at our fingertips, right? And if we take a look at this is a very simple example. Some sort of a transactional purchase where first of all we were made aware of that product by a display ad. Maybe on Facebook, right? And that's okay. We're at a Google event here, but how many of you guys have to advertise on Facebook? Raise your hands. Yeah, keep those hands raised. Keep them raised. You get all those pictures? All right, we got all of you. Yeah, expect a very nasty email. There's lots of channels out there, right? There's lots of different touch points. No, that's okay because we have different parts of the funnel that we have to interact with people on. So people put something in the shopping cart but don't buy it. We have retargeting to go after them until they finally buy it just so the ads will stop. We can do that across Criteo, we can do that across the Google network. And suddenly we've got multiple silos of information and data here that are not tied together. This is a nice little diagram on a piece of paper. But those data sets are not linked together. It is very difficult for us as an agency to go back to our clients and explain to them all the touch points on the path to purchase. It's very hard for us to measure the success or failure of each of these things that we're managing for our clients. And again, this is a simple example. It's not that simple. It starts to get very complex very quickly because people have access to all of this all day, every day. Right? We've got a phone in our pocket. We're constantly connected. Right? Our refrigerator is telling us when we're running out of milk or what it's amazing. The Internet of Things is going to make this even bigger. So this problem is going to get more, not less complex. And ultimately what's happened here is that the way that society is changing now in this digital revolution broke the way that we typically measure things. We like to measure things like, hey, I did this, I put this ad out there, here was the impact later. I'll connect those things, I'll correlate them in my mind, and I will say, I will take credit for that particular advertisement, right? And that's how we did things for a long, long time, econometrically. And we'll talk more about that at the very end here. But econometrically means I have a bunch of inputs that I can observe, some outputs that I can observe, and I'm going to try to model the interaction between them. But that's all I can do. I can't actually connect these experiences, right, until now. We can do this stuff now. So I'm going to talk a lot about that in this section, right? The other interesting thing to think about is that we have two big problems to solve, right? There are, yes, of course, lots of different devices out there. There are lots of different channels. There's new stuff popping up all the time. You guys probably, your kids out there using the Instachats and Snapgrams and whatever else is out there, right? There's lots of new ones that I can't figure out, but I have to ask my children about. There's lots happening, and within those channels, right? In the intra-channel example, search for example, we are searching all day, every day for all kinds of different things. It is not a linear path to whatever is on our mind and the purchase we need to make. And then across all the different channels, it's not just search. And within search, it's paid and it's organic, and then there's display and there's programmatic, and then there's marketing automation, which is replacing email and database marketing, and then we've got social, and we have all these different channels to manage, right? So how are we going to do that? And not only that, the device. Devices have changed the way we live our lives. Think about it. How many of you guys still talk like, I'm going to go online later on this afternoon? No. You wake up online. You go to sleep online. Right? How many of you guys have your phone with you, within 1 meter of your body, 24 hours a day? 24 hours a day within 1 meter of your... You know what else is within 1 meter of your brain and your heart? Your arms and your legs, right? Your phone is as important to you as your arms and your legs at this point. And if you don't believe me, have you ever watched a grown person an adult human being walk out of their home and realize they have forgotten their smartphone, right? It looks like a child who just is watching the balloon fly away at the circus, right? The despair in their eyes, right? And as they finally figure out what's happened, it's really sad. They can't even get back home to get their phone because they don't have GPS anymore, right? The phone has become what we live with, right? It is a part of us, and it allows us to be online all the time. We already saw 9 out of 10 customer journeys cross device paths, right? This is important. And the other thing to think about mobile is that it allows us to bring all this information with us, right, to a local context. And that's important because if you think about it, there's been an increase of 45% in local shopping queries. And if we think of this in the perspective of an intra-channel experience, let's think about me sitting on my couch, watching television, tablet on one hand, I've got my phone in the other, I'm doing some search about a product or service that I need. Right, this is the night before I plan to go get it. I have all kinds of information that I can get. I'm high up in the purchase funnel, and then eventually I take that same exact device, and on that same exact channel, I leave the house. And now I'm searching for the actual stores where I could buy this particular product or service. And then I get into the store, and I get in front of that product. And then I'm using that same device and that same channel in search to figure out who else is selling it cheaper. And we've all done that. It's this idea of showrooming, right? We can do that now, and it's all intra-channel, totally different mindsets and experiences happening all within one device and one channel. Right? In that local experience, we can contextualize ourselves down to a square meter of where we are. And that becomes really important. And again, it's not just that search, right? When we're on that particular phone, we're probably also looking at reviews. We may be interacting with emails that you sent me to give me promotions or coupons. We may be interacting with social posts that we're on, or all the other exposure to every one of these other channels that are out there, right? Again, it becomes really, really complex. So how do we as agencies express the value of what it is we're doing to our clients? How do you measure value? Again, it's hard. It's hard, and there are way too much data for us to manage. If you think about the combinations of every one of these channels, all the different paths to purchase that every individual can be using across these different devices and channels and sources and different time periods and whatnot, we can't do it by ourselves, not manually, not with brute force. This is where we can lean on intelligent assistance. Right? We can lean on the machine learning capabilities that are out there to help us attribute value back to the work that we're doing for our clients. And that's what we're going to focus on throughout the rest of this session, right? Attribution. Attribution means attributing value. And we're going to talk about that. Before we do, though, I forgot something up here. Could I maybe have someone pass that up for me real quick? Yeah, so everybody could take a look here. We're passing a box up here that I need. Here it comes. There it is. That's my Chromecast. I'm not going to be able to binge watch anything later tonight if I don't get this, and this is important. Thank you. Yeah, everybody stare. Make sure if you touch it, you're getting very embarrassed. There we go. All the way up? Or you're going to try and keep it? We're all watching. You can't steal it. That's a nice one, right? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, appreciate it. Thanks. What was your name? Olivia. Okay. Everybody who touched this, can you guys raise your hands? All of you who touched it? Okay. You guys are all dead to me. You have no value to me whatsoever. I would have gotten this with or without you, but Olivia. Olivia, thank you so much for making sure that I got my Chromecast. I am going to have to give some value to this. I don't know how much, but I'm going to say it's worth the entire Chromecast. So this one's yours. Thank you. No, you guys don't get to clap. You're dead to me, remember? I just told you guys, you're dead to me. Now what was that? That was the attribution model that virtually everyone in this room is using, right? If we think about it, here's a visual representation of what attribution looks like for most people in this room. It's a whole lot of super angry people. And then we get one Olivia at the very end. And Olivia, I know you probably didn't want to show your baby pictures and whatnot, but it looks like it was good cake, you know. Happy, happy last touch. Now, of course, that's not true, right? We have value for all of you guys who raised your hands, but it's really hard for us to put a number on it. And that's what we're going to talk about, because every one of you guys was a touch point on the path to value. So how do we figure out how much each of those touch points was worth? And when we talk about attribution, again, it starts with this idea of attributing value. And there's a path that we find most of our clients go through. And this is important, right? Because it starts with figuring out what that value actually means. We're going to go through each one of these steps here. And again, you guys are going to have the slides to go through. I would encourage you to use this slide with your clients when you're having that conversation around how do we measure value? Because this is important for the agency. You want to be on the same side of the table as your customers. It's not about getting more click or spending more money or getting a better percentage of spend or whatever that is. We're looking for the outcomes that matter to our customers. So I'm going to take us through each one of these things, and then we're going to wrap this session up. So number one, identifying the objectives. What is it that your client wants? How many of you guys use tons of metrics like bounce rate and pages per visit and things like that out of analytics, right? How many of you guys think your clients care about bounce rate? That when the end of the year comes, they're looking at all the numbers and they're saying, yeah, it's great that we made some revenue and some profit and customer satisfaction's up, but man, that bounce rate, we gotta get that bounce rate down. It's killing us. No, that's a metric. It's just a number. And we have to figure out what the actual objectives are. And when we do that, we have to do that across all these different touch points. Right, so I'm gonna give you a framework here, but I wanna start with what most people do. Right? And you can not be ashamed of this, because most people around the world do this, right? They look at all the different touch points that they manage. They're managing email and websites and display campaigns and all that great stuff, and they say, you know what? There's tools out there that allow me to slap JavaScript on everything. So you do. You go and put Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or whatever other analytics tool, you put JavaScript all over the web, right? You're slowing it down. Jeremy's freaking out here because, again, it's taking seconds off of his day, right? There's lots going on here where you guys just try to track everything. Now, even worse than that, we start to say, well, there's device changes happening here, right? So someone's changing from the laptop at work over into the mobile phone that they've got and the tablet. So how do we figure that out? And you say, I can figure that out. I'm going to use login cookies and device IDs, and then I'm going to have huge data warehouses where I stitch all these things together. I'm going to make people log in everywhere they go, blah, blah, blah. And what ends up happening? You're wasting money on Amazon or Google Cloud or something like that because you're just storing a bunch of data that doesn't mean anything and it's not working, right? At the end of the day, my plea to you is to stop tracking everything. What are we trying to track? We're trying to track people, right? And the big problem is you can't stick JavaScript on people, right? You can try. Most of them will get much more upset than this guy. He apparently thinks it's a good idea. But either way, it's not going to work. And we have to figure out who these people are and what these people are doing. And if we don't, if we just throw JavaScript on anything, then this is a visual representation of most of your analytics implementations, right? It kind of works, right? But again, we've not done what we need to be doing, which is we need to focus on the things that determine value. So let's go back to market, right? Let's go back to the very first MBA courses that they had in ancient Greece. This is what they were teaching. They said marketers are supposed to connect with different people who have different needs, are at different stages of a customer life cycle, and are interacting with us across different experiences. That's it. That has never changed in marketing, and it probably never will. That's what we're trying to do as marketers. Now, the good news is in this digital revolution, we have some pretty good translations for this, better than we've ever had before. Right? Think about it. Different people are segments. They're the audiences that we can create and define by data. Right? Different needs are defined by the business goals that we sit down with our clients and we talk to them about it, right? We say, what do you want? It's not a lower bounce rate, it's more money, it's more profitability, better customer retention rates. Those are the things that get people excited, get people out of bed, get people a bonus at the end of the year. That's what's important. Different stages. We have a customer life cycle. It may be complex and it may be nonlinear, but it still has different buckets we can put people in. And this is important too, because a lot of people will use things like Facebook likes or social promotions and shares as a KPI for success or failure. And that's great at an advocacy stage of the customer journey. Right? When someone's already interacted with us, they bought our products and services, they know who we are. At that point, it is reasonable for me to expect of them to go out and tell their friends how awesome I am. It is completely unreasonable to use that as a KPI for someone in the awareness stage. They don't even know who you are yet. Why would they be telling everyone on social media how great you are? Right, so it depends, right? The context depends here. And then, of course, experiences now we can segment by devices and channels. So let's take an example. And again, you guys will get this slide. I highly suggest you use this with your clients. It's the same slide that we use. This is a framework that we use to take the context of all four of these things and put it into a measurement framework. And with a measurement framework, we can define the KPIs that collectively determine success or failure, and then we can determine the metrics and dimensions that those KPIs are made up of. That's what we're supposed to track. That's where we can slap JavaScript. Nowhere else. Okay? So here's how it works. We basically take a combination of each of these four things. And this is a great exercise to sit down with your clients. Again, this is the strategic side. Strategic stuff that they'll be paying us for in 5 to 10 years from now. We sit down and we say, client, again, this is a super, super high level example, but just to illustrate the point. Client just launched a new mobile website, and they're very, very worried about their existing customer base not being able to get what they need, right? So we break this out into a segment of existing customers. They're at the retention or growth stage of the customer journey. Our goal here is to have them find exactly what they need on this brand new mobile website that we just launched. Right? That breakout of those four things allows us to intelligently talk to our customers about what KPIs would tell us if we're doing a good or bad job at this. And I would submit to you that this is a pretty good list. Maybe a half dozen to a dozen of these things. And you can start to see the columns that I've put in place here. Use this verbatim with your clients, right? Here's the KPI. And yes, you will see bounce rate and time on site and page views per visit, the trifecta of engagement. But I would never use these alone in a vacuum. And there's also more complex ones that we'll look at here in just a minute. But you can start to see that I'm calling out the exact metrics that are required to track. The segmentation that I need to apply, and I'm saying where I get it. And I don't care if it's Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or Core Metrics or whatever you guys are using, and it's not always an analytics tool. You can start to look at other things here. I've got, in this case, social activity, where I'm looking at the number of tweets and posts that have a negative sentiment on my brand. I can use a social monitoring tool to get that. Why would I use that as a KPI? Because if there's a lot of people complaining about my mobile website on social media, that's probably not a good indicator. If everybody's happy, fantastic. Over here I can see site search. Why am I using site search? If site search drastically increases for mobile users as soon as I launch my new website, that might not be a good thing. It's people not being able to find what they want. Right? And that's specifically what I'm interested in right here. So great KPI. And again, I list out where I'm going to get that data, and it comes from all sorts of places. And I know you guys are saying, I can collect hundreds of data points in an analytics tool that's for free out there in the enterprise these days. Why would you limit it to just 6 or 10 or 12 KPIs? And I'm going to tell you that I don't. I'm collecting all kinds of data. If I look at a complex metric, like a content engagement score, this is the way we build these for almost all of our clients. We will look at all those different things that we can track, and then we will weight them. And we will build an engagement score that can show us a holistic measure of how people are engaging with the content on a website and a mobile app and a mobile website, whatever it happens to be. This engagement score can then be calculated at a visitor level. It can be calculated across visits on an average, and suddenly you'll start to see where this sort of way of approaching lots of data makes it digestible. So reporting. I'm going to show you an actual report that we give to our client, one of our clients. This is in Tableau. You could just as easily do it with Data Studio or any of the other data visualization tools. This is all they get. That's it. This is not an Excel spreadsheet with every cost per click, every keyword and mesh type that you just downloaded out of AdWords and put your brand on. Right? That's not reporting. So what's happening here? In this case, we can see that we've basically built the report around the framework. So I have the goal, I have the segment, I can drop that down and look at any one of these. And if I drop this down, by the way, the data changes. So if I look at everybody here, that's great. If I look at just the segment that I care about, existing users, the data will change. So this now suddenly becomes a much bigger report than it originally looked like, right? I can also drop down segments, devices and channels, which is the experience. So if I want to see how people on my mobile website are looking, I just drop it down and I can start to see. And I can start to see these complex things like a content engagement score. And I can see how it's trending over time, and I can see the makeup of it all in one visualization. And if I see something that's out of whack, if I click on it, it doesn't just sit there statically, it takes me into the data set. So now I can start to investigate where's the opportunity or the problem that I have to fix. And this becomes the reporting. So this is important for us to figure out what it is that we're trying to attribute. What value is it? And when we do that, we're only then ready to move into stage 2. And stage 2 here is to figure out how we're going to slap that JavaScript all over the web. All right, so here's, again, the way I would submit we do that. Number one, we start with a software engineering process that shouldn't look unfamiliar to anyone here who's done implementations before. We start with those business requirements. We then move to a technical solution design. We then implement it, and then we go through QA and so on and so forth until we get the solution up and running. Those first 3 steps are the ones I want to focus on. I already gave you the first one. Your business requirements are done in this framework. That tells us everything we need to track. Now the solution design is really just figuring out, should I use an event for that, or a custom dimension, or in the Adobe world an SPROP, or an EVAR, or whatever it happens to be, and I document the technical solution design. Now I have documentation for my implementation as well. And there are three things in particular that I think we should focus on when we are implementing with the idea of attribution in mind. Number one, make sure we are tracking the conversion actions, all those KPIs that are important to us. In the Google Analytics world, that means we're tracking conversions and funnels. We're tracking e-commerce transactions if we have any kind of transactional thing happening. That's super important because that's the value we're going to be attributing value back to. We have to figure that out first. Number two, integrations are huge because we have lots of different touch points. So when you're using Google Analytics, for example, take advantage of the fact that Google also owns AdWords and DoubleClick and so on and so forth. You click a button and put in an account ID and suddenly you get the cost, the pre-click information from DoubleClick, from AdWords, all in that account. You're now starting to get the full set of data of all those different touch points along the way. But again, that's not all of them. And Facebook and Google, I don't think are going to have a native integration anytime soon. So for that, we have to start using this third one, campaign tagging. Those UTM tags. Those UTM tags that give you 5 parameters to define every other piece of media that you're putting out there. Right? So yes, that covers social. It covers all the links in every email you're sending people. It covers all the other display networks that you're on and you're using. You can upload all this data and cost data and so on and so forth. You finally, for the first time, put all this data in one place. And that's important. That's what you need to think about for the implementations. The other thing to think about is the integrations. So a lot of you guys stopped listening a good 5 minutes ago because you say, I have clients and not a single one of them has an online action. They're not selling anything online. Happens in the offline world. So there's integrations that have to happen. 5 years ago, I used to sit here and say it's really, really hard. You have to hire somebody like me to put some hack in place to make it work, and then we have to be continued to be hired on a daily basis to make sure it keeps working, right? These days, life has changed. So I'll give you a quick example of one of our clients. They're in the for-profit EDU space. So that means that they have for-profit universities. They actively go out and recruit people to come in and take these courses. Could be 2 years, could be 4 years, could be advanced degrees, whatever it happens to be. And this is a business. But the problem is the application process doesn't happen online. The start of the application process happens online, but then you're put in touch with a counselor and you go through that long process of offline conversion, all of which is tracked in their case, Salesforce. It could be any CRM that's out there, but Salesforce being a pretty big one, there's lots and lots of resources that you got for it. So in this case, what we've done is we've actually made a connection between the web analytics tool, which in this case was Adobe, not Google, and Salesforce. And this is what the diagram looked like. Right? Again, you don't have to be that complex, but the idea here is that we connected web analytics with CRM and we automated the data import and we automated the data export. We also worked with an enterprise data warehouse that kept all kinds of other information about all of these folks. And by doing this, what we were able to do is inside the web analytics tool, we can create segments on offline data. So if we wanted to see, for example, how a particular group of people, an audience, right, going back to the people of the marketing structure, if we wanted to see how an audience that was defined by people who are at stage 3 of the offline application process are interacting with things online. Are they watching our help videos? Are they coming back on our email marketing campaigns? Right? Those are interesting questions for us to start to answer. And we can do that now by creating segments with offline data. And we can do it with Adobe, we can also do it with Google. Okay, so whatever analytics tool your clients are using, this is certainly a possibility. The cooler thing is that now I can take all the online touch points and I can look at offline transactions that are happening much later on. So in this case, you're looking at an Adobe CID, which is their campaign ID that can be associated with exactly what media I was buying on what channel across what source, back to an offline conversion that was happening. In the Google world, you can start to see here those conversion columns are around a lead qualification in a CRM. And I'm not saying this here to give you guys a way to do all the complex data connections here. I'm just telling you it's possible. So don't give up, right? Make sure that you can do this. It's getting easier every day with the tools that are coming on the bigger CRMs and the bigger players that are out there across the MarTech stack. Okay, so you've done our integrations. You are now finally ready to look at your first report. And your first report is wrong. How many of you guys look at a report like this? Right? Not a bad place to start. Why do I say it's wrong? When we look at conversion columns here, over here on the right-hand side, every one of those conversions is saying that whatever's in that row, whatever source and medium was in that row, was the last touch point I had right before they converted. So if we take a look at an example here, that number 2, Google Organic, right? I had a whole bunch of people that came onto the site on the Google Organic search, and 1,466 of them got to this stage of the completion. Yay, Google Organic, right? That's you. You're Google Organic. And you get all the credit. But everybody else gets nothing. Let's talk about upper funnel. Anybody believe upper funnel marketing is still useful? Yeah, there's a few holdouts out there who still believe it. Of course it is, but it's not represented here. Where do you guys see display in this list? Nowhere. Why is display not in the top 10? I'll tell you why. Because this is the last guy who clicked on a display ad and bought something, right? And this guy paid the price. I mean, his wife and he left it, his wife left him to his brother probably. Right? He got excommunicated. He was trying to tell people, it was an accident. I clicked on an accident. They're not buying it, right? This is the problem with the last click model, right? The last click model that we just looked at gives one person a Chromecast and nobody else gets anything. But the reality is we wouldn't have got it up here without everybody in mind. So what's the right way to look at things? I'm telling you the last click model is the wrong way. And I'm actually not even saying that. I'm saying it's a way. We'll come back to that in a second. We can look at all kinds of other rules-based models, right? We have first click, which would say, who started it? Can you guys raise your hand, whoever started it? Yeah, you would have got the Chromecast. But we didn't use first click, so you got nothing. Sorry. We've also got position-based, right? So the closer you are to either the start or the finish, the more credit you get. Or a linear model where you just get credit if you're a part of it and you get equal credit all the way along the way, right? Or we've got time decay, which means the farther back you go, the less credit you get. Anybody know which one of these is right or wrong? None. None are right and none are wrong. You can think of these rules-based models as different lenses to put on and look at your conversion data through. So if you look at a first click model or a linear model or something like that, it's going to help account for those upper funnel activities. And you guys know the upper funnel activities, the non-branded search campaigns you're running, right? The display campaigns you're running, some of those social campaigns you're running, just to connect with people for the very first time. You don't expect them to click and buy, but in any one of these that's not a last click model, they'll get some kind of credit for that. And that's helpful to facilitate the conversation with your clients, right? So that's the next thing we do. We move into a new set of reports within the analytics tool sets that are out there that will allow us to facilitate these conversations. And again, this is not a dedicated attribution tool. At this point, we're still talking about web analytics tools. Adobe and Google both offer this. In the Adobe world, we have what's called the marketing channels report, where we can set up and look at first touch and last touch at the very least. So I can sit down with my clients if they're using Adobe Analytics and I can say, listen, display is looking terrible on a last click model, but let's look at it on a first click model and I can start to tell a different story. We can start to figure out where our budgets should actually be moving, right? Now in this space, Google starts to pull away a little bit right now. Google has a whole bunch of tools. They've obviously invested a lot in this whole concept and idea of attribution. One of the things that they started with, they released years ago, called the multi-channel funnels reports. This is, again, available in the free version of Google Analytics. All you got to do is set it up. What it does is it gives you a set of reports, the first of which is called assisted conversions. And this is the one I love to sit down with clients with. This is a great example. And it's just like in sports, right? If you think about hockey or basketball, where the person who shoots the basket or makes the goal, they get the points, but the person who passed it to them gets an assist. What we're doing here is that same concept with channels. And I'm using really high-level channel groupings. Of course, you can drill into this and see deeper and deeper levels of granularity. But in this particular case, we can see row 4, display, right? Like I said, in display, no one has ever clicked on a display ad and bought something. But $24,000 worth of revenue came as an assist. So now we can start to have a conversation with our client, right? And it's not, why you waste money in the Google Display Network or with DoubleClick Display and DCM or DBM. We're not wasting money. I'm now showing you how it's part of that conversion path. So you start to see things. The ratio that you'll get here is going to make them jump out really quickly as to those that are under or overvalued in this conversion chain. So super useful report. All you got to do is set up, run it, and sit down and have a conversation with your client. The next one that I like is the pathing report. So this one will actually show you the most common paths towards a conversion. And a lot of these will start to have that conversation around how these interplay with one another. So let's take a look at the top one there. You've got a Google CPC search followed by a Google organic search and eventually a conversion. This is not that uncommon. If you think about it, how many of us will look for a product or service, we'll click on the paid search ad, and then for me, I look at the product, I say I really, really want that, I know I make bad decisions, but I want it, and I go and I ask my wife, honey, can I have this? And she says no, and then I do dishes for like 3 weeks straight, and I ask again, and eventually I get permission to do it, so I go back, do a search, and when I do the search this time, I don't click on the paid ad, I click on the organic ad. I convert. The SEO agency gets all the credit for it, and the SEM agency gets nothing. And what a great report to sit down and talk to your customers about it, and say, this is the path to conversion that your customers are using. That's why we have to do all these things in concert. Right? They work together. And then when we graduate from the MCF reports, there's a whole other set of conversion reports out here that Google Analytics, the free version, not the paid version, the free version gives us. Right? They give us the ability to look at all those rules-based models. Right? First click, last click, linear, time decay, position-based. And we can even create new custom models. So you can go in and you can give more or less credit to certain channels based on certain criteria if you want to. This is, again, rules-based. You don't need to have a certain huge data set to use these. And when you do this, you can go into a report. This is one of my favorite reports to sit with clients. Just like that MCF report, I can compare first and last in linear models side by side. And then I can pick something out and have a very specific conversation. So if I want to look at display, for example, my client will ask me, Dave, why did you spend almost $4,500 on display campaigns? And I say, well, the reports I've been giving you up until now showed that we got $900. And my client says, you're fired. That's a really dumb use of my budget. And then I say, but wait a minute. It wasn't $900 because display is an upper funnel activity. And if I use a different attribution model, I can show you that it was actually somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 worth of value that $4,500 investment created. And instead of my client saying, Dave, you're fired, my client says, Dave, how much more can I spend here? Totally different conversation. And again, you can see the ratios here. You'll see the overvalued and undervalued channels. And I'm showing you the super high levels. Dig deep. Click. Find the granularity there, and you can actually start to have those conversations channel by channel, campaign by campaign, around where you should be spending your client's money most effectively. Okay. So at that point, we have done everything we can do with the analytics tools that are out there. And we're going to start to talk about some of the more advanced, now paid analytics features and functionality that we have. And before we do this, you may be asking yourselves, why did a flaming garbage can just fall on the screen, right? Again, I have a story with a moral, right? Number one, this is important. So, whole bunch, picture a university campus, right? 3 professors walk into a room, big room, and they see that there is a fire in one of the waste bins. Right? There's a chemist, a physicist, and a statistician. And the chemist walks in there and says, I got to start figuring out what chemical compounds I can use that will react with this and stop the oxidation so that this fire will stop. And the physicist says, I got to calculate how much energy I have to remove from that garbage can so that we can stop this fire. And as these guys are doing their calculations, they look around, and the statistician, the data scientist, is running around the lab, and he's set fire to every other garbage can in there. And the two guys are like, what are you doing? And he says, I'm going to solve this problem, but I need a bigger sample size. And I say that because we're entering now data-driven and model-driven and algorithmic sorts of approaches. And these do require a certain sample size. So in the case and context of data-driven attribution with Google, right now you need at least 400 conversion actions to occur in a rolling 28-day period, and you need at least 10,000 unique paths on the website. Okay. Everybody in this room, every one of your clients fits that bill? No. All right, so again, don't tune out, because there's things we can do. All right, first thing we can do is abstract the conversion. And what I mean by that is that maybe you don't have 400 sales in your e-commerce transaction of your clients per month. But how many add to carts do you have? Let's say you have 100 sales per month or 50 sales per month, but you get 100 or 200 add to carts. How many product page detail views did you get before they added something to a cart? All right, keep going back that chain until you get to 400. And then you can tell these tools to optimize on that. And it's better than nothing. You will lose accuracy at each step of abstraction, but it's better than nothing. So there are ways we can use this even if we have smaller clients. Okay, in the Adobe world, which your smaller clients probably will not have, you can pay extra for Adobe Analytics Premium, which comes with something called Workbench. This is a data scientist's dreamland. They'll sit there, they will have every regression model they could possibly imagine, they can build their own, they can figure out all of the different attributions for every channel that you need. How many people here have a dedicated team of data scientists and clients with Adobe Analytics? Not many, right? So for those of us who are and do have access to that, use this all day, every day. It's a great tool. For those who don't, Google Analytics 360, we're talking about the paid version of Google Analytics now, has a tool that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So it gives you very simple versions of what's happening. In this case, this is a data-driven attribution report out of GA360. Again, don't stop paying attention because I'm talking about paid analytics now, because this is coming to everyone for free very shortly. And what it's looking at is the last 4 touch points before conversion, and it allows you to have that conversation with your clients. So I can say, you know what? Organic search for me is not an upper funnel activity. It's a lower funnel activity. And again, we can break this down into more and more granular levels to figure out which campaigns are at what point in the funnel, right? This is great. And the question you're probably asking yourself is, that's good, it's good for me to see the breakdowns here, but how about the numbers? How many actual conversions can I attribute to each one of these particular channels? Because then I can figure out cost per conversion, and I can figure out bid prices and all that great stuff. And you can. There's another report that will actually give you a data-driven cost per acquisition and the data-driven number of conversions. And this isn't going to match all of your other tool sets that are out there. AdWords will give you a different number. Your last-click Google Analytics reports will give you a different number. But this is built by the model. This is machine learning telling you what the actual number of conversions that you should attribute back to that touch point along that complex path to purchase across devices, across channels, across sources and mediums was. And now I can confidently go to my client and say, I am willing to spend up to $23.10 per conversion and you will be profitable, client. Anything more than that, I gotta work on it. Anything less than that, it's great, but let's keep optimizing. Right, now we take this full circle back to those CPA bidding, smart bidding sorts of environments, right? And we can do this in all kinds of programmatic markets too, and we can start to tell the machines that this is the target we're shooting for. This is really cool stuff. And this is being done, again, with an analytics tool. Just need the data. That's where we end with analytics tools. So when we've gone through Adobe with its Workbench, or Google Analytics 360 with its DDA, now we get into dedicated multi-touch attribution tools. And I want to pause before we go here to say that everything along this path to purchase so far is something that will provide tremendous value to your clients and that you can confidently sell to them. Right? You should be charging for a measurement framework. That should be part of your onboarding process, right? You should be charging to build people into these other reports and sit down with that consultative conversation with your clients to show them what a multi-channel funnels report looks like and break down the channel groupings. This is all value add. Once we get into the MTA tools, this is where we are actually taking a non-econometric, but a stitched together version of all the touch points along that path to purchase, and we have a dedicated tool that is focused on solving this problem. That means that I'm not guessing. I didn't have a JavaScript on somebody's forehead or something like that. I'm using a device ID, I'm using a cookie, I'm using some way to track that this person was actually exposed to this ad on this ad server, eventually interacted with all these different points along the way and converted on some goal. I'm not extrapolating anything, it's not deterministic, it's not probabilistic, these are real conversions that are happening. Lots of tools that are out there to do this, right? Google's was based on the Odometry acquisition. So Google bought a tool called Odometry. Some of you may be using tools like Visual IQ, which Nielsen just announced that they're buying. Convertro is another one that's out there. Market Share, which Newstar bought. Like, you can start to see the trend here, right? This is a big, big deal for the large advertisers. And the way that it works, and specifically in the way that it works with Google's attribution, and again, pay attention, because this is coming to everybody for free here shortly. What it's doing is it's evaluating all those different paths that people follow across touch points, across channels, across devices. And in a very simplistic world, let's take a look at it comparing this first and second row. First and second row. So in this particular path, we can see that we had a paid click that was not in this one. And we can see a difference of 0.2%. So what we would do here is we would use what's called the Shapley Cooperative Game Model to figure out that paid search has a lift impact of 0.2%. The only thing is that we're doing this across thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of paths, and we're letting the machine learning algorithms figure this stuff out for us. So it's coming up with a real number, right? Well, again, this is super cool because this is how we get those data-driven CPA targets and how we get the actual number of conversions we should be attributing back to the work we're doing as agencies. Google has done a ton of work out there in this. They have two offerings. Attribution 360 is the paid offering that's going to come out in the first half of next year. And then they have a free attribution offering, which they announced a few months back. So again, the data-driven component is going to be available to everyone. But the first thing that I'm telling you about it, you're probably going to be mad at me, is that you can't have it yet, right? Just like I came here and told you guys you were getting call tracking. And then like 4 years passed, and eventually you guys got call tracking, right? We're getting close with attribution. It's going to roll out. It's a huge deal. Google's putting a ton of investment in it, and it's coming out with two versions. The first one I'll tell you about here is the free version. And the free version is going to allow you to aggregate all of your Google Analytics and AdWords data, the double-click data. It's going to use Google's device graph to deduplicate conversions. You guys have all had that uncomfortable conversation with your client where you call them up and you say, hey, we sold 50 shoes today. And your client says, no, you didn't. You sold 25 today. And then you say, I'm going to individual shoes, right? And you have really weird conversations about that because you're duplicating all of them, right? So that's going to take care of all that. You're deduplicating across all these devices and channels. It's pretty cool. The paid version is going to have a few other things. It's going to have the ability to import non-Google data and do all kinds of data customizations, import from different DSPs and programmatic buyers and whatnot. It'll have the television modeling as well, which is an important piece. But again, that free version is going to come with the DEA for everyone. It's important. So we're going to talk about how it works real quickly. Number one, like I said before, it will ingest automatically all of the information that you're collecting across other Google platform tools. That's huge. Because we still are a partner of MarketShare and others that are in that space. The big problem there was that it would take 6 months for us to get everything re-tagged. Because to use a third-party tool, you had to put their tag on every single piece of marketing that you're putting out. Right? Every tweet, every post, every ad, all has to have third-party marketing. That's a huge thing to manage. With Google, if you're using Google's campaign tracking or tracking something in analytics or using AdWords or DoubleClick, it's already there. So that's a big difference. The uptime here is around 30 days. That's how long it takes to get up and running with attribution, which is a huge advantage. Once you've got all the data in there, then you're basically leveraging Google's machine learning to figure out these models. It will apply these models and it will figure out how much each of those touch points is worth to you. And eventually it's actionable. So in the Google ecosystem world, if I figured out what that CPA target was, I don't have to go and log back into DoubleClick and tell it to bid for this CPA. It knows. All I do is say, grab that CPA target from attribution, whatever that happens to be at this moment in time, that's my target. You're letting the machine manage this to an optimal place that humans just can't do. And our role is then reduced to monitoring the machine, making sure that it's working the way it's supposed to, right? The biggest thing by far that I think Google has going for it, and again, I'm saying this as a partner to the other competitive offerings as well, is that Google has a device graph. And there are very, very few companies out there who can do this at this point. So let's think about it. How many of you guys are logged into Google on at least 3 of the devices that you have right now? Across email, across whatever else. Basically across any one of these things. If you are logged in, Google's not tracking that you, John Smith, are doing this and that and the other thing and tracking every click, but they do know that you are the same person across all of these. So from an aggregated, anonymous methodology, they can pick apart in a deterministic, not probabilistic way, that this is the same person who is on all of these devices. It's that person's phone, and if they convert over there or they get an ad impressed on them over here, it's the same one as this person on their desktop or laptop later on. That device graph is huge. That's a big, big part of solving this cross-device problem. And Google is one of few who can do it. You could argue that Amazon could do it, right, because of all the shopping that could be regional. You could argue that Facebook could do it. Problem there is that you would have like 90% of the data just 12-year-old fake accounts or whatever they're using Facebook for anymore. Or Microsoft could feasibly do it in the B2B space because Microsoft still owns the B2B space, right? Outside of that, this is a difficult problem to solve. So that's huge, the device graph. Now once you've done that, you actually, I'll give you a free preview of what the free tool is going to look like. So this is, again, not very different from the other tools I just showed you. This one's going and looking at each of those different channels. Again, it's just one place to have all of this. You don't have to log into AdWords and select data-driven attribution and look at that conversion column versus whatever analytics last click is showing you. You go into the attribution tool where all that data is being funneled in, and it's using a data-driven model. So now you can break apart all the different channels. Again, dive in, click down, see what's going on here, and you see that you can see very quickly which ones are over or undervalued, and have those conversations with your clients. That's the important part. And again, this isn't brand new. You guys have seen that data-driven attribution was already introduced into a lot of the AdWords products and DoubleClick products that were out there, right? So Google's been watching, and Google's been watching as people start to adopt this stuff. And over time, I can't tell you the exact number, I can tell you it's tens of thousands, not thousands, but tens of thousands of advertisers that are using the data-driven model. And on average, they're reporting 5% more conversions. So even if you're sitting there and you're saying, Dave, I don't believe in math, I think that you're an idiot and all this stuff is just lies, why wouldn't you want to tell your clients you're getting on 5% more conversions, right? If you're on a down month, switch over to DDA and put out that good report at the end of the month, right? Important stuff. It's working. It's working because there is upper funnel, middle funnel, lower funnel advertising. And this is a great way of showing how that value is attributed throughout that entire chain. So last things I'll tell you here, I'll talk about is on the paid side, some of the things that you get on the paid side that you don't get on the free side. One is the spend optimizer. So what this is doing is it's taking advantage of the fact that it's building models. And with models, just like in that bid simulator and whatnot, it can create what if scenarios. And what's really cool about this one is that in the paid version, I can go in, give it a budget, say $70,000. I can tell it any constraints I have, like I gave my buddy Bill an insertion order for his new startup social network, and I can't get out of that one. Whatever you've got there, you put in the constraints, you run the models, and it will tell you, hey, right now, you have 23,000 conversions, you're getting them at $3 per conversion. If you allocate your media the way I'm telling you to, you would get 6,000 more conversions at 60 cents less per acquisition. Show me a person in this room who can do that manually. We can't. We can't compete. So again, this is a great way. If you have clients that have that threshold of, again, the amount of spend, the amount of conversions, where this data set is large and diverse, you can start to do this stuff with great accuracy. And then all you do is scroll down the page. And when you scroll down the page, it will actually show you where you're over or under invested against the optimal models. And then you continue to iterate, and you monitor the machine, and you try new channels and see how they work. And that's the role of the agency going forward. And I think that's really a great thing for us to think about is our job is to monitor the machines, to feed it and to guide it. The last thing you get with the free tool is television. So again, not super important for everybody in this room, but for those who do have clients with big TV budgets, this will actually show you in relationship to the raw search query data that Google has, what the impact, the lift that you have for every 15-second spot that you're throwing out there in television. So you automatically ingest all the insertion orders, and it will tell you what it modeled it would have been without the television and what happened during the television commercial. So that's pretty important for TV advertisers. Timing-wise, again, the paid version is going to be coming out in February of 2018. We're one of the launch partners, so I do know that. The free version is going to be coming out in April. I'll say April. I don't know if it's April. Importantly, you guys don't know if it's April. It's going to be sometime in the first half of 2018. But Google's aggressively pushing this out. It's not going to be one of those things that they withhold, right? Because this helps everybody. And Google has made very public statements that they're out there trying to solve the attribution problem, and we're one of the very few who can actually do it. So a couple of things to leave you with here in preparation. So we have some months to take care of this. This is a great time to sit down with your clients and talk about the things we need to be doing with them. Number one, Google Analytics. Right? Get it set up. Even if it's a secondary analytics tool to a primary Adobe or whatever that happens to be, the integrations are worth it alone if you plan on going down the attribution or attribution 360 path. So a few things to think about. Number one, make sure you enable the advertising reporting features. I won't read the rest of these to you. I will just call out that bottom one is really only if you're using the paid version. If you are planning to use the paid version, or you have clients who you think might, then make sure you create right now separate dedicated views, and in those views, don't use a user ID functionality and do not strip out any URL parameters. That will help you take advantage of the full suite of functionality of the paid version alone. Over on the AdWords side, the big things are just auto tagging and making sure that you have these linked to analytics and that your taxonomies and your naming conventions are both consistent and relevant, that they make sense. Right? So this is a great time to go back inside your campaigns and in the names put if it's an upper funnel, lower funnel, middle funnel sort of campaign. When you see these in the reports, it'll make a whole lot more sense as to why you're applying what model to which and which ones will make it look better. And then over on the double-click side, again, I won't read these to you. The bigger thing I want to point out here is that Attribution and Attribution 360 especially are really built for advertisers who are funneling most of their ad trafficking through DoubleClick Campaign Manager. So if you are not using DCM and you've thought about it in the past, this might be a really good time to talk about it with your clients and funnel and traffic all of your ads through it. If you are, again, really good place to be, and if you're not and don't have any plans to, then again, there's other attribution tools out there as well that can help you do the same sorts of things. So if you forget about this, today actually there was a Marketing Land article that was published that I wrote. It's all about all the things you should do. It's got those in it and more. Feel free to look it up and you can go from there. So the last thing I want to talk about here before we end this session here is how this fits in with traditional. And again, you'll see that this is kind of off on the right. It's not part of the path to attribution. For a lot of advertisers, media mix modeling in the econometric sense is what they've already been doing for decades and decades and decades. It's the modeling of the inputs and the outputs to figure out how much you should be spending across which channels. So for you, those of you who have clients who are spending a lot of money on television and outdoor and radio and print and those sorts of traditional mediums, this is the only way we were able to do attribution before. Right? We could basically take an econometric model. We would say, here's how much I'm spending on all these different ad campaigns. Here's how much money I made later on. Let's use a model to connect that unknown space. And to do that, you would build response curves, and those could figure out halo effects, and you could start to build all the different impacts from each of these channels. And you would come back and say, here's how much we should be spending in television, here's how much in radio, and the last column was always, here's how much much you should spend in digital. And digital was treated as one channel. And we all know that's crazy, right? So what I'm telling you today is just, again, so you're aware of it, and for those of you who this does apply to, is that we can use econometric modeling with digital clarity. So it used to just be the channel and the output, right? So we would say you spent this much on television, you had this much in sales. But now we don't have to just use digital as a single channel. We can break this into owned and earned and paid across social, across search, across video, across all kinds of different digital channels where we have lots of data. We may not be able to know that it was you that was watching this particular piece or you that was actually interacting with this Facebook ad, but we can use those same econometric principles to build out media mix or ecosystem models that look more like this. And this is something that I just want to make sure everyone's aware of, right? This is cool because it's actually quantifying and showing us the impact that we have and the digital activities that we as agencies are doing for our clients. So let's take this example. Let's say that paid media was actually television. So in the econometric media mix models, television was shown to have an impact in web sales and an impact in offline in-store sales. And that would have been all we get out of the media mix model. But now we have all these other data streams for all the other spend that we put across everything from YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all these other ones. And we can start to see that that actual television had a big impact on Facebook page views, which then led to a whole bunch of website visits, which then led to a whole bunch more sales. And we can quantify the impacts of every one of these and lay out those interactions between them. This is a great diagram to sit down and have a conversation with your clients of why we should be spending more on YouTube, why we should be spending more on Facebook or Twitter, why we should be spending less on owned and more on earned, whatever that happens to be. So again, this is the stuff that's already happening, and it's out there, it's available for all of us. And the key that I think everyone is looking for here is how are we going to marry the econometric models with the data-driven cookie device ID-based models. And once we've done that, then we have total attribution. And with the rise of addressable television and media and things that are out there, all the out-of-home billboards that are now recognizing Wi-Fi signals and device IDs, we're getting closer every day, but that's the next problem that we'll have to solve. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this session, and we'll go ahead and do a few more questions. So thank you guys for sticking in there.
Stage assistant again. Okay. First one, there's a lot of questions in here. Thanks everyone for sending it. I very likely won't be able to go through all of them. What I will encourage you is we have a expert, AdWords expert outside, so just come and bring your questions if they're not answered here. First one, does data-driven attribution work for clients that don't have many conversions?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying earlier is no, it doesn't. You have to have a certain threshold of data for this to work. That threshold is 400 conversions in any 28-day rolling period and 10,000 unique user paths. So you can approximate that with 10,000 unique users on the site. If that doesn't work, then you have the options of going back to rules-based attribution, which again is a step change ahead of last click only. And then you can abstract that conversion back to something that does have 400 times per 28 days. And that's a good way to handle that, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Second, it's a question around using the Google Analytics. So to track cross-device attribution, does Google Analytics plan to use at any time anonymized Google-driven user IDs?
Yeah, so
tracking.
So that's what that device graph is. And you've already started to see the transition Google Analytics users is that they're not talking about visits and sessions anymore. They're talking about users and deduplication that's happening by using the Google device graph. So so the answer is yes, and it's already happening. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's one of the next steps. This attribution talk is excellent. What is the best next step that I can take in my agency to begin implementing these attribution things?
Yeah, so I'll say that, again, I've kind of harped on it throughout the day, but I think the days of being an executional agency are over. Right? You're not going to be able to spend that many more years being the agency that goes in, sets up a campaign, builds a website, clicks a button, and spends money for your clients month after month. So I think embracing AI and machine learning early is probably the best thing to do. For those of you who have people inside the organization who are interested in this, then empower them. Right? There's tons of free learning tools out there or classes you could send them to just get them to the point where they can start to understand and have that conversation with clients. Those who are in a position to hire, I would say hire them. And the best way that we hire these folks is we go get a bunch of resumes, a bunch of CVs, We put them on the table and we throw half of them in the garbage can because you don't want unlucky people to work for you. And then we look for people who may not have actual experience in the ML or the AI space, but we look for people who are inquisitive and have gone through some sort of statistics or data science course, right? Because again, there's not a whole degree program you can go for AI for marketing at this point. There will be, but there's not right now that I'm aware of. So yeah, I would say get it into your organization as quick as you can, even if it's just tangential at this point. Yeah. Cool.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks, Dave. I think that's all the time we have for questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.